Eduardo Vicent sent this to us. Not exactly a question, Professor, but a video suggestion. A comparison of the combat effectiveness of Germany's European allies, the Italian, Romanian, and Hungarian armies. I believe this is a very interesting topic, especially considering the performance of these troops during the encirclement of the 6th German Army at Stalingrad. Oh, to answer this, I even switched to white ERP mode here. It looks cool, right? Look, man, it looked good on camera. It really did. Let's go to our map so I can explain this to you. So what's the difference between the three allies? The difference in combat effectiveness among Germany's three allies. And this map here is the map of Operation Blue once it had already reached Stalingrad. You can see Stalingrad here, the Volga River. Down here you can see the Caucasus. In other words, it's here, southwest of Russia, yes, the German advance up to Stalingrad. Operations between July 24th and November 18th. No, July 24th to November 18th, 1942. There was a little mistake here, look. But look at this. On this map, you can see the famous German 6th Army. Where is it? Wow, the map just got huge now. Paulus's German 6th Army, right here next to Stalingrad. And Roth's 4th Panzer Army. Here it is. Look, 4th Panzer Army means that this little tic-tac shape here, see, is an indication of an armored army, right? A tank army. Panzer Army, okay? By the way, man, if you really like these maps here and want to learn, this is exactly what I teach, map by map, okay? So you can learn the whole Second World War, map by map. Want to learn this? Click the link in the description to buy our course, Strategy and Tactics Through Maps. Think like World War II generals in the European campaign, okay? It's available there for you, and I'm already launching the Pacific one as well. I use these maps to explain the entire Second World War to you. But now I'm going to use this map to explain the question, right, from our colleague who asked to know about the structure and combat effectiveness of the Axis allies. I just have to say the following. The Romanians were the closest to the Germans. The Romanians, especially in the Soviet Union, on the Eastern Front, they contributed the largest number of troops. They took part in more decisive battles. And particularly here in Stalingrad, you can see the position of the Romanian armies. There were two of them, okay? The 3rd Romanian Army, which is here, look, led by General Petru Dumitrescu, and the 4th Romanian Army, led by General Constantine Constantinescu. Right. Just by their position here, you can already tell that they are held in higher regard by the Germans than the other Axis allies, right? Why? Because they are literally covering the flanks of the 6th Army's advance, which is supported by the 4th Panzer Army, right? To take Stalingrad. They are literally covering the right flank and the left flank of the German advance, okay? Right after here, you have the Italian 8th Army, okay? Italian 8th Army under Italo Garibaldi, okay? Marshal Italo Garibaldi. Finally, here, look, you can see way back there, you have the 2nd Hungarian Army under General Gustav Jani. And way back there, already linking up with Hans von Salmat's 2nd Army, right? That's where the Army Group Center starts, right? The area of operations of the Army Group Center. So, yeah, how do we explain this? We explain it like this. The Romanians, they had much more interest. They had much more to gain from the war in the East than the other two allies. Hitler warned, and Antonescu, the dictator of Romania, was warned by Hitler a few weeks in advance. A few weeks, right? Do you know who were the first to be warned? Who were they? It was the Finns, man. The Finns. At the beginning of 1941, Finland was the first to be informed that Barbarossa was being planned. After that, months later, the Romanians were informed. Okay. I'm not really sure when the Hungarians were informed, but I know for a fact that Benito Mussolini was told about Barbarossa on June 22, 1941. Man, June 22, the day it all started. Mussolini was only told on the day itself. Hitler didn't really trust Mussolini that much. You notice that, right? Because he didn't tell him about the invasion of France the year before either. He didn't tell him about the invasion of Poland 2 years earlier either. And he also didn't tell him about the invasion of the Soviet Union. Hitler was very afraid of Allied espionage within the upper ranks of the fascist government, right? Because the fascist government was very close to the Italian monarchy. And King Vittorio Emanuele III was the same king of Italy who had allied with England, France, and Russia in World War I. You know, Hitler was really wary of Vittorio Emanuele III. Vittorio Emanuele III. Doesn't his Italian name sound better than the Portuguese translation? Yes, so you know what happened? The Romanians were informed about 4 weeks in advance. And in those 4 weeks, Ion Antonescu got so excited that he managed to mobilize two armies, man. He managed to mobilize the 3rd and 4th Romanian armies to send them to the Soviet Union, right? So why did Ion Antonescu get so excited? Why? Because he wanted to take back the territories that the Soviets had taken from him in 1940, right? Bessarabia and Bukovina, 2 provinces. Antonescu also had his eyes on the so-called Transnistria, which was a region that isn't that little strip of land we know today as Transnistria, there in eastern Moldova, but it was a region between the border of Romania and the Dniester River. That was called Transnistria. So all of that, which even includes the port of Odessa, was of interest to the Romanians. They saw that as Greater Romania. Okay, so that's why the Romanians fought more fiercely in these first 2 years of Operation Barbarossa. The Romanians had an arms industry actually quite interesting for 1941, right? They already had an airplane factory. They already had a vehicle factory, right? Some armored vehicles, even. So the Romanians had money, right? That's the difference. The Romanians, because of the oil, were a wealthy nation. Well, Hungary didn't have all that money, right? And Hungary had the weakest armed forces of the three. Let's put it this way, the most inexperienced, the least equipped. So the Hungarian army's combat effectiveness was considered very low. For that reason, it was never involved at any time in important frontline actions. Okay? Just so you know, the Romanians were mainly responsible for taking Odessa, the port of Odessa, in 1941 in October. The Germans simply moved forward. Manstein, with the 11th Army, moved forward, entered Crimea, and left the Romanians there with the responsibility of taking Odessa. And Odessa fell to the Romanian attack. Okay? And what about the Italians, man? Mussolini. He was actually at the beach when the messenger arrived and delivered the message that Hitler had started Operation Barbarossa. And Mussolini got excited about that because he also believed that the Soviet Union, facing such a massive German attack, would fall, man. And then, man, the potential gains, at the negotiating table were substantial, very appealing. So Mussolini quickly ordered the formation of an Italian expeditionary corps to the Soviet Union. The Italians sent in 1941, therefore, 3 divisions, 3 infantry divisions. I think one was a motorized infantry division, right?
Uh,
The 3rd division, Solaire, was a motorized division. So
yeah.
the Italians were on the front line, together with Army Group South, under Rundstedt, since August 1941. So they were soon thrown onto the front line as well. And mainly, the 6th Bersaglieri Regiment. You remember, right? Those soldiers who have black rooster feathers here, attached to their helmets? They're considered the elite of the Italian infantry. So the 6th Bersaglieri Regiment really proved to be a very combative unit, right? Very tough. They even took a city, which I don't know if it's on this map here, man. I don't know if it's on this map. Okay, I don't think it's on this map. Okay, but it's about here. And it's the city of Stalino, right? Which today is the city of... It's the city of Donetsk, right? The city of Donetsk, which was called Stalino at the time, was taken by the Italian Expeditionary Corps. So the Italians also had, operational value there among the Romanians and the Hungarians, right? And in 1942, after the winter, Mussolini wanted 6-man. Mussolini doubled down because he sent 5 more divisions, 5 infantry divisions to the Soviet Union, among them 3 Alpine divisions, Tridentina, Kunitz, and Julia, all 3, forming the Alpine Corps. So these 8 divisions made up the Italian 8th Army, which was placed under the command of Italo Garibaldi. Okay. And what happens? This Italian 8th Army was big, right? And superior to the 2nd Hungarian Army. However, neither the 8th Italian Army, much less the 2nd Hungarian Army, nor the 3rd Romanian Army, none of them, they're right here, look. They were very good at anti-tank defense. None of them had anti-tank weapons really capable of destroying Soviet tanks. The T-34 and the KV-1, no, they didn't, man. And look at what the Germans did here. They manned the entire southern bank of the Don River with the troops of their allies. The northern bank of the Don River. Look what was up here, man. The Voronezh Front, led by Nikolai Vatutin, right after Philippe Golikov had been in command here. Vatutin takes command of the southwestern front. And here you have the Don Front, right, led by Konstantin Rokossovsky. Man, it's a lot of tanks, a lot of men, a lot of equipment, a lot of artillery. Ready to attack the northern front. Look. The northern flank of the 6th Army's advance, over there towards Stalina. And this whole area was guarded by German allies, not by troops. There were no German troops. Man, from Voronezh to Stalingrad, there were no German troops. It was Hungarian, Italian, and Romanian forces. Do you know how vulnerable that is? What that vulnerability means? What it could potentially represent? Represents? It's no wonder that Zhukov's counteroffensive, right here, with Vatutin's southwestern front, used the Serafimovich bridgehead here and attacked the Romanian army head-on, ran over the 3rd Romanian Army. And here in the south, they ran over the 4th Romanian Army and closed the encirclement in Operation Uranus against the German 6th Army and the 4th Panzer Army. Part of the 4th Panzer Army, here in Stalingrad. Half remained outside the encirclement. And later, in December, this was November 19th, in December, Then Felipe Kulikov will carry out Operation Little Saturn, a new encirclement, much larger. Who did it hit? Garibaldi's Italian Eighth Army. And then complete anarchy broke out here. Look, in this Axis sector. The retreat here, look, was extremely desperate to save these troops. Most of them managed to get to Rostov. Others here retreated to Taman and crossed the Kerch Strait. So, the Soviet planning for the counteroffensive of Operation Uranus and Operation Little Saturn was heavily based on the operational weakness of the German allies in the Soviet Union, on the inadequacy of the Romanian, Italian, and Hungarian armies. Good heavens. So, Eduardo, that's a good way, that's a good answer to your question, right? About the combat effectiveness of the Axis allies, right? The allies of the Germans in the Soviet Union. While the offensive was happening in 1941, many of them, the Romanians and the Italians, did well while they were on the offensive. Once that state no longer existed, they became a major vulnerability. And if you now want to know more about World War II, the whole thing explained just like I explained here to you on this map, just by my course, Strategy and Tactics on the Map. Think like the generals of World War II. The link is right here. Look, right in the description. You can join our second class since the first is already full. And with feedback, right? With very, very positive testimonials from people who are extremely satisfied with what they learned there. All right? So that's it. If you like this answer and want to learn even more about military history, you can buy my book, The Atom as a Weapon, which will teach you everything about the creation, development, and use of atomic bombs in World War II. It's for sale at the WeClap store through the link in the description and also via the QR code on the screen. And if you want this book here, autographed with a dedication for you, just send an email to saladdejera@gmail.com with your zip code so I can calculate the shipping. And